All right, you maggots, listen up. Now, when I first got into computers and bulletin board systems, I would try to streamline everything. And this one guy I worked with, he gave me two programs, two tiny little programs that basically I would keep on all my diskettes. And one was called Co, and one was called DR. And this allowed you to move files around and make copies of them and move the copy. And it was very easy. So that was one of the things that really went well. And then there were things that you didn't think about. You're laying in bed, and from the cellar you hear a beeping noise, and you're laying there going, "What just happened?" So you look at the clock. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. You go down. You're half asleep, and there's somebody that decided they want to page you at 3 o'clock in the morning to ask a question. You know, they want to know, what does this program do? It's 3 o'clock in the morning. So I get on there, I start typing. I realize the guy is either drunk or extremely stupid. So I said, look, I got to go back to bed. I'm trying to explain to him I have to sleep. So I go back, and the next day, a guy had called me up. He was a sysop, and I mentioned it to him. He goes, "Oh, John," he goes, "I got the program for you." He says, "It'll fix them. What you do is you can set the time that you will allow them to beep you and ask you a question, and that's a utility at the time." It was a little confusing because it's in 24-hour format. He says, "Put this program in instead," and you put the program on, and it was basically, think about this, 1989. It was basically an artificial intelligence program. You put that in, and when somebody beeps you, and then it answers them, "Yes, this is the sysop. Can I help you?" And it would look at certain verbs that the person used, and it would do it. And they had one that would do. It was a psychiatrist. "Well, tell me how you really feel." And then the person says, "I hate my mother." "Well, what is it about your mother that you don't like?" It was that. It wasn't real smart, but it would hit it sometimes. So I put this program that's a sysop fake program, artificial intelligence, back in 1989. It also kept a log, and the next morning you could, and I could read that stuff upstairs. See, I figured a way I could pull certain files. I had a serial line from upstairs down to the computer downstairs through UNet, and I could bring up the log file to upstairs computer, and I'd bring it up and I'd sit there and read it. And this poor person, you know, they're not mentally bright. They start asking questions about all different things, and the computer is just, it's trying its best to answer them. But you got to figure AI back in 1989, and the poor person, when you read the log, they were actually getting confused what they were asking after a while because they weren't too bright. And there was only one person that said, "Are you real? What is this?" He figured it out after a while because he was asking verbs and questions and stuff that it had no clue what he was asking. But this guy says to me, "So how'd you make out?" I said, "That's sick." He goes, "Oh," and then he was collecting them. And then he would read some of the best ones he ever had. That was one of the things he did. He says, "Oh," he says, you can't take this too seriously." I said, "Well," I said, "it's kind of mean." He goes, "Why?" He says, he had his setup that if they beeped him 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock a.m., that this program would kick in. He says, if they don't know what time it is, or they don't know any better to bother you, it's their fair game type of thing. But there was so many things you could do with a bulletin board system before the internet. And once the internet came along, it killed everything. Now, there was a place called Event Horizon, and being dyslexic, I read it as Everett Horizon. I thought it was a guy, but Event Horizon is near the black hole. And this guy would take adult pictures out of magazines and scan them, and then he put them up on his bulletin board as GIF pictures, and it said Event Horizon. It was this bulletin board, and they went all throughout the world. Everybody was passing these adult pictures around. Well, what it turned out to be was uh, he was just taking the pictures out of magazines. You can't do that. So they went after him. But man, the older people that were over 18 or 21, whatever it was at the time, they would constantly send me these adult pictures to get more credit so they could download more pictures, to be able to move more pictures over to other bulletin boards so they could download more pictures. Porn became a pretty big thing. That's why the internet took off so big, because you could get a lot of porn for free. And then I basically, I could tell you this story real quick. I was at the dairy at lunchtime, and the guys were online over at the I won't say the name of the company because it's still there, but they start saying to me, "There's no porn on the internet." And I turned to him, I said, "Are you freaking for real?" He goes, "We've been searching." I said, "Put the Huns yellow pages in there." I don't know if it's still around anymore, but I think Ampland was the other one. And these guys, the next day, they come back and they're looking at me. They go, "How did you find that?" And I'm saying, "Well," I explained to them, back in the bulletin boards days, there were other things that at the bottom of the picture it would say this: "Go check this guy's website out." It would be a bulletin board. And then after I took my bulletin board down, I would still visit these other bulletin boards. And they started having pictures, and they would have like a little bit of advertising on the bottom of it. And then at that time I had internet, and I'd click on the Huns yellow pages and Ampland. I think I got them right. I'm dyslexic. I can't always remember everything exactly. But it was so funny, the look on those two guys' faces, and they're both married. And then I didn't want to get into that with them. Like, when you went home, like, and you, after sitting at work, and you're supposed to be working, and you're watching porn. And what the Hun and Ampland did was they had snippets of porn movies on there, way ahead of everybody else. You would have to pay to see a GIF, not a GIF movie. What the hell were they? What are the movies called? Anyway, MOVs, when they first come out. Yeah, see, I'm talking way a long time ago. You're probably going, "That's not what they're called now." Well, they were MOVs, and you could do a MOV. People pass one around. They'd have like a Walt Disney character dancing, and then there was GIF files, which came from America Online. It's GIF, but pronounced GIF, and those became animated ones. There were ones that were pictures, and ones that would flip a few frames. And then there were people that took an executable file, and they put some of these frame things in there and put a story in between. And that's how pornography started. It started as pictures, then as MOVs, and there was some other ones too. And every week it was something new. And then, like I said, once the World Wide Web come along, these kids from college, they had no use for bulletin board systems anymore. And one of the weird things, they would come in through satellite systems, into oh gee, am I gonna forget the name of the college? Newark College of Engineering, and Newark College, NC. It has letters. Anyway, they would come in through the satellite, and then they would use X modem because that's all they could afford in their country. And to download a little tiny file, it would take them 2 hours because there's a delay in the satellite, and that would cause the error correction to kick in. And then the thing would back up so many files or so many bits, and then try again. It would hit the satellite delay, then it would back up again. And if you had a certain like X modem, you could see how much they've actually downloaded and how much more they had to go. And you figure out how many more times it's going to drop. But they would stay with it in order to get that file, a zip file. And then they would use that file to go to other websites and get credit, and they could get more files. That was the thing. But I want to tell you about this. There's this place called the ARC Exchange, ARC. Now, there was zip file, which means The file's been zipped together. Now, ARC is archive, and there was this place called the ARC Exchange, and this guy had this large military hard drive, and he had the most programs of any other bulletin board system, and he didn't care how long you were on the thing. He just didn't care. But at some point, his hard drive blew up, and he got the bill how to fix it. They couldn't salvage the data, so he put it all back up, and he asked people to please re-upload the programs that they had taken so he could read. They wouldn't do it. I was doing it, and I emailed them, and I said, is it okay if I give you zip files instead of archives? And he said, yes. And every night, I would upload maybe 20, 30 files to the guy, good ones. And all the other people did was come in and grab what I was putting up there. They weren't going to help the guy. A lot of selfish people. See, when we first did the bulletin board systems, people were, like I said, they would call you up on the phone, and the guys knew I was good at like fixing stuff. And they had a woman that bought a hard drive from Bill. Let's just say Bill, and that was actually his real name. They bought a hard drive. She bought a hard drive from Bill, and it was good. They tested it several times, and they plugged the hard drive into a card with cables. They put it in Bill's computer, and it all worked. She came home, and she plugged it into her computer, and it wouldn't work. So they said to call me up. So I could actually work on a hard drive using debug. There's this program in DOS called debug, and you can actually do diagnostics. And I start doing the diagnostics, and I'm like, this makes no sense at all. I know the card is good. I know the hard drive's good. And she takes the hard drive out, the card out, puts her old hard drive back in, which was a card that had the hard drive on the back of it. And you think, well, maybe there's jumpers that have to be moved. I'm thinking no. So I said, can you look inside your computer? And this goes to what the other guy was telling me yesterday. I said, you got the card in the computer? Yes. And I said, on the back of the card, are there like fingers facing down that don't go anywhere, like a connector? She says, yeah. She says, I have to put this card in a certain slot because in the other slot, it hits components. I said, yeah. You have an XT computer? She says, yeah. I said, oh, those guys should have caught that. I said, you're putting a hard drive into an AT card, a real AT card with the two connectors, into an XT computer. I said, is it possible you have an XT card there? She says, oh, I have one of those. She goes over to the drawer, and she comes back with it. And then she knew how to put the cables on. She'd gone through that. She put that in, and I went through debug with her, and we formatted. You low-level format the hard drive, and then you format it. And then she had a really large hard drive, as much as her BIOS would let her have. See, later on, when we went to AT computers, the BIOS in there got smarter, and it would ask you how many cylinders the hard drive had, how many heads, cylinders, heads, something else too, levels. Anyway, you'd answer the questions, and it would do a test, and it would let you format the hard drive. You didn't have to low-level format it. And later on, the AT computer, I got a whole BIOS chips. I had extra ones made. You plugged it in. The hard drive had a number on it, like 23, and you put that in, and it automatically knew how many heads, how many. It did all the hard stuff for you, and then you would put some. You would format, and then you would see it would come up when you powered up the next time. It would come up and say C, and then you'd put your directories on there just to test and make sure and do a dir. And some of these things, I wanted to tell you. When I put dir to get a directory, it was DDIR on my computer because I changed the name of all the executables. Format was FFmat, and the other one was there's another one, and they were for ANSI bombs. And I mentioned in the last about the Chinese kid. He would send you a zip file that was an ANSI bomb. And what it was is, when it unzipped it, it would execute using format and something else. I can't think of it now. But what I had done was I automatically knew about hacking before these little kids knew what hacking was. I had a friend that worked for the phone company. He taught me a lot of real quick stuff. He did it a different way. I just renamed the executables on my computer. And I would watch them, the ANSI bomb, try to do format C/S. And I'm like, why is it doing that? And I learned, and then I remembered ANSI bomb. And that's when I got the kid's caller ID number and went backwards and found out where he lived and everything. And then he was, I feel sorry for the kid. That's the kind of house he was living in. But anyway, there were all these different tricks I had on my computer. And I had other sysops come over and they would say to me, your bulletin board looks so much bigger. And it was just two, they were AT computers, but they were only 8 megahertz speed. Think about it. 8 megahertz, the two computers were. And my upstairs computer, you could switch between 8 megahertz and 12, or 8 and 10. It was a baby AT. That was one of my first computers. It was a 286. Then right away I went to the 386. And then I had a friend with a computer store. And I would hang out in the computer store. And when anybody would come in and got an upgrade on their computer, my friend would say, this guy would like to buy your old motherboard. So I'd get a motherboard for like $25. That 6 months before was $130. I was pretty good with Lucky Stars. They were my favorite. I knew how to. I used to clock some of them back sometimes, and then with some processors you could clock them a little bit faster. But I got really good at certain things, and because I wasn't afraid of the hardware. And I wrote one of my first files. You might be able to find it. It's called 2harddrives.zip, and it's still up there in some of the archives. And people would contact me and say, everybody knows that. They didn't. Everybody thought their motherboard was the same as everybody else's motherboard. There were motherboards that you could just put 2 hard drives in. You put one hard drive on the one cable and the second hard drive, or on the same cable on the second connector. And you turn it on and it would boot from C and it would make the other hard drive D, depending on the amount of how big the hard drive was. But other computers, the second hard drive had system files on it, it would just keep rebooting. It got confused. So I wrote the file up and I explained the cables. There was a cable that had a fold in it. There was a cable that had a terminator resistor. And then I would tell them, format the hard drive, the second hard drive, and don't put /S. And then that'll be your D drive. When it boots up, it boots off C, but you can do D. And so many people contacted me and thanked me for doing that. They were going out of their minds. But see, the big mouths, they all had better motherboards that were a little smarter. And they would say to them, you're doing something wrong. See, this stuff's been going on a long time. And that's why I started realizing it. And then after a while, it becomes part of your personality to know that there's a person out there that has fallen into a rabbit hole that you've been in. And then I would make a text file and it would help the person out. And that was the first time I ever sat down and wrote anything. Because when I was in high school, I didn't like doing book reports. But I was so into the hard drive problem of not being able to have 2 hard drives on the same computer that I figured it out the hard way, because there really was no information. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to do a text file. And then I passed it around. People, they can find my bulletin board, had a file in it. They come back and thank me. They emailed me and it said, thank you. I was going nuts with that. And of course, as you're emailing, or not emailing, you're on a conference, talking back and forth, the big mouth shows up. You're just doing something wrong. No, the motherboard the BIOS wasn't smart enough. So when that computer would power up, it would look at the C, it would look at the D, and it would see system files, and it didn't know which to reload from. See, the real smart people, or the people that shoot from the hip, they they report what they've experienced. They don't figure that someone else might have a different type computer or a different situation. And that's where I'm good at that. I've been down those rabbit holes. And anytime I'm down a rabbit hole, I do a video. Like these stories, I'm doing a few of them, see if people like reading them or listening to them. I don't know yet. And it's not for any other reason. I want to give you a background of what was before the internet. And the people, the dean's list, guy was real serious. And he had one of the biggest bulletin boards, other than ArcNet. ArcNet blew up. Nobody helped the guy put it back up. He was gone. There was the Dane, the Golden Dane? No, the Golden Dane. The Golden Dane. That sounds about right. That was Max, and then the dean's list. They were the two top bulletin boards. They were the ones that when you went on, you didn't screw up on those websites because they would ban you. And they always had the latest zip files. And how they got the latest zip files, which were shareware, was the authors had them on a list and they would upload. Now later on that happened for me. As I was on for so many years, QEdit. I loved QEdit. Oh man, QEdit was good. It was just a simple editor program that I had in my DOS directory, and all I had to hit was the letter Q and return, and it would come up in a text editor, and you could do programming in QEdit, and it delimited files. I forget the name. It takes off the end character on each line of code, so you can then put that code that's been done in a text editor right into a compiler, and that was QEdit. I actually talked to that guy online, and he would come once a month and put the new version of QEdit on my bulletin board, and a few other guys. But and I did talk to McAfee, the guy that's been arrested and all that. When he first started, I used to call him up and say I found a virus. I talked to him about it. He always had it. He always had the virus, but he was a character. And then the Quick Packet guy, he was real nice. He helped me out. I said I really couldn't afford his compiler or whatever he had, the sorter at first. And he told me what I had to put in this other one that he had written to turn it on. And I was doing it. And then when I got the money together, I went back to him, called him up, and then I got a new sorter. So you had to have a mail sorter if you became a mail hub. People would upload messages, and then you had to have net status for each website that you went to, and you'd pull all your messages down from your conferences. It would pack them all up, and then you had net access to that guy's bulletin board. You go up in his door, and you'd upload all the new messages for it would be Magnet at the time. I created Magnet. There also was another Magnet, but Magnet had all these different little graphics, a different picture for each conference. I really put a lot of work into it, and I didn't make any money with it. It's similar to my YouTube channel. I'm not looking to make money. We're almost at 1,000 people, and this is when the trolls start showing up. They have 3 videos themselves or none, and now they go after the guy that's got almost 1,000 subscribers. It makes them nuts. I'm not even trying. I don't say to them at the beginning of each one of my videos, I don't have this fancy intro. I don't, please knock the bell for please click on the bell to subscribe, and I don't do any of that. I go right into the video. I hope you enjoyed this video. I think that's it. A video. Yeah. I think that's it. All right, that's it.